Good morning, good morning. Hello, and welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy. This is my cat, Moko. And with me today is my fantastic co-host, Secular Rarity. Hey, man, how's it going?
Hey, I'm happy to be here, man. I always love getting to hang out, and I do not have a furry animal. I just want to go ahead and let everybody know.
Oh,
I can't have pets here, so
boo.
yeah, I don't have. Right. But what I do have, this is I thought would be something that would cheer everybody up today. So, um, I'm here in the Bible Belt. For those that don't know, there's a lot of churches in my area, and a lot of let's say forcefully marketed churches. They'll put their stuff everywhere, and there was this adorable little booklet that was found.
Find
Um,
joy this Easter.
yeah, and on the
Okay.
inside, it just talks about just where you can go to church here, just close by, and there's just some little info on the love of Jesus Christ, and this actually came with this adorable little Jesus figurine, and I
Hold on,
I
hold on.
had
Let me see that again.
I had to take it. So it says Jesus hearts you on his little sash,
Oh
and
my
it's one
goodness.
of those little
Try,
like
try putting your
squishy
hand
like
up behind it.
one of those like squishy pencil topper things, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
Um and yeah, this was placed at a cash register, I believe, in an attempt to try to get people to see it and pick it up and then come to church.
And so
And
you just
I
pocketed it.
in an effort to do Satan's bidding, I took it so that nobody else would see it.
Oh my goodness. I absolutely forgot that next week is Easter.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I got a message from Dean, who's supposed to be on the third Sunday of every month. And he's like, "Hey, Eric, I kind of have an Easter service that I can't, not do." And so I know that I brought this up before the show, but if you're interested and want to hop on again, I'd be happy to, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but we didn't even get to introducing the show. We just kind of dove right into things, didn't we? Hey, everybody, if this is your first show, this has been weird, and we're glad that you're here. I'm Eric Murphy. This show is called Skeptic Generation, where people call in, talk about what they believe and why. We pick some topics, and I have some of my favorite people on to just shoot the shit. Well, no, not shoot the shit, because really they're great at what they do. The people that I bring on here are fantastic in their areas of expertise. Elliot, Secular Rarity, is one of the most fun people when it comes to talking philosophy, esoteric shit. If you wanted to want to get into the meat and potatoes of a philosophical topic, like, this is one of the people that I love talking to the most. And so, yeah, if you want to call in, we'd love to take your call. The topic today that we chose, at least, has to do with free will. Are we meat robots? I know that we have probably, Elliot and I have similar opinions, but we want to hear from you. So if you want to call in, talk about that, or, spiritual beliefs, esoteric topics, call in 412 SKEPGEN. That's 412-753-7436. Or you can go to tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. That's tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. Yeah, our call screener is on the line, and we would love to hear from you. We've got open lines. In the meantime, dude, I know we've got the topic, but you did a Herculean undertaking since we've talked last. You
Yeah.
have been so busy organizing, and I tried to watch the entire stream. I took bathroom breaks, and stuff, but I think one of your guests said it best. It felt like you called every you
Every
called in
favor.
every favor you had in the atheist world, and
Yeah.
man, they
Yeah.
answered. So do you want to talk about what you did, if for those people who did not show up or didn't know what happened?
Yeah. So on March 31st, we had a big live stream fundraiser for this brand new nonprofit organization that myself and a couple of other people in the Middle Tennessee area have been building over the last 6 months. So the new organization is called Secular Rising US, and it's all about connecting and supporting atheist, humanist, and secular-minded people through all kinds of different events and activities. So activism opportunities, community opportunities, education events, chances to get out in your community and provide some service and just make the community a little bit better. So we did this super cool 4+ hour live stream where myself and Gary, the vice president, my really good buddy here in the area, we've been working on this for a while, and we had 30 plus different atheist, humanist, skeptic content creators and stuff. You and Genetically Modified Skeptic were there.
Yeah.
We had Seth Andrews, Glenda Jordan, Mandisa Thomas. I can just keep listing because it was truly jam-packed with amazing people, and we were able to raise over $2,000.
Woo!
To help us start
I love
this kind
that.
of mission and just get it out there for people. So one of the big things that we are working towards with this organization is an actual building, an actual physical space, the first ever dedicated space to non-religious people in the entire state of Tennessee. And
That is
so
incredible.
that is definitely a big lift. So we need all the support we can get. But we had a bunch of people show up, man, and everybody was having a great time and just shouting us out and saying all kinds of great things. So it was a super fun time, and we are really excited for the next one.
I know that I had a blast watching. How long was it? Like that stream was.
It was literally over 4 hours. Yeah, 4 hours straight.
And you were like rotating people every 15 minutes, just unceremoniously kicking them out. Didn't matter if it was, whoever.
That was all because of the amazing work of our team behind the scenes. A lot of the incredible chat moderators that are helping out here and have been doing great work for a long time. And then, of course, Cynthia McDonald and Ethan Michael producing. Those two are absolute powerhouses.
They're wonderful. Absolutely. No, we have such incredible people behind the scenes, both in front of and behind the camera in the atheist skeptic space. And it feels like, Elliot, you have done a really, really good job of building that community. And I am just like, it feels like you have sown the seeds and you are reaping the rewards of that. And I'm really, really happy to hear that and see that. I think, I'm excited to see what happens next. But so I was just checking things while you were talking. Before we dive into the topic, I did want to tell you, are you logged into Call in the Studio at the moment?
I'm not. No, I can. I can look in.
Well, so we have a theist who wants to talk about the transcendental argument. In regards to nihilism. They're getting screened, and I definitely do want to talk about our topic for the day, but I thought that might interest you. So here's the topic for the day. Are we meat robots? Specifically, do we have free will, right? It feels like it's been talked about in philosophy for years and years and years and years, hundreds of thousands, do we actually have agency? And you have so many different philosophers over the years who've added to the conversation, is there a ghost in the machine, of our body? Is there a spirit that is driving this vehicle? And if so, where's the steering wheel? Where are the brakes? I wanted to get your take on it. What did you think?
Yeah, I think so. Longtime viewers may have heard me say something like this before. And those that have been around in this space for a while are probably familiar with what I'm going to mention here. Shannon Q has this really awesome breakdown where she talks about why she doesn't believe that the soul exists. And one of the biggest pieces of that for her was the deep understanding of what it actually takes for the various neurons in our brain to fire. And
Mhm.
it's this whole process, right, of sodium being on one side of the lipid bilayer, and that causing a an opening, and then that passing through, and all this fascinating stuff.
Mhm.
And at the end of that, she basically says, like, you know, at at what point is there room for this soul to engage, right? To inhabit us and to move us. If all of this is what's
She
happening,
she gives
right?
the Laplace answer. I have no need
I
of that
mean,
hypothesis.
kind of, right? I mean, because all of it works without that, so well. And it's just like you're shoehorning in this other thing. And I feel very much the same way when it comes to free will, is that it seems very much like we can trace back all of these processes, with such specificity. And at no point in time do we really need that hypothesis. We get absolutely everything that we're expecting about the world, right? The big problem that I see from a lot of people whenever they talk about free will is the consequences in the future.
Hmm.
They often focus on the fact of, well, if we don't have free will,
Then
then
blah
we
blah blah blah.
can't X, Y, Z.
Yep.
Right. So it just seems to me, when we actually sit down and do the math, when we actually trace it all back, it seems obviously determined. It's just when we think about what comes from that, what happens in the future, I think that makes a lot of us uncomfortable. And I
Yeah.
understand why. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting that you're right. If we don't have free will, then what ought we do, right?
Mhm.
We're all arguing about the ought part of it, and using that to try and justify an is statement.
Right.
And yeah, that how many bad consequences will make something less true. And yeah, I think that is such an interesting, where you take that, right? What would a Calvinist believe about this?
Mhm.
What would, what would a regular believer have to say? I know we've got a believer on the line, but they've got their topic. But what should we do if that is the case? What does that mean about crime if we don't have free will? Are we
Mhm.
punishing people for something that they never had the choice to do? Then what is the point of that? And yeah, it forces us into like facing this. But when it comes to, this makes me feel uncomfortable, so it must not be true, or this makes me happy, so it must be right. That definitely is the framing around our caller that I would love to pick up. Before we do, I just want to put the phone number out there one more time. If you want to call in, let me get the up here, 412-SKEPGEN. That's 412-753-7436. Again, 412-753-7436. You can call, it's toll free, and internationally, go to tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. That's tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. Our call screener is ready to talk to you. Do you just want to dive into the first call?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Tirso in Mexico, you are live on the show.
Oh, hey guys.
Hey, so is it Tirso, or how do I pronounce your name?
It's Tirso. Yeah, it's like an alias of
Yeah.
one of my characters, so that's why I go by.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Okay, you mean like a screen name, like a World of Warcraft kind of username?
yeah,
Nice,
something like that.
nice.
I like the character, and it was something that came from me, so I said like, I can identify with my own character, right?
Well, I totally get it, brother. So what did you want to talk about today?
So I usually go in Discord servers. I have conversations. I like to really having this kind of conversations, and
Mhm.
so I was at a time thinking through what my worldview is, what my like what why do I think as I do, and how do I formalize it. So I developed an argument and I wanted feedback, and people in the server told me that it would be interesting to talk with you, and that you were probably the best person to talk about this because you were like um, fair-minded and a cordial host.
Oh, we
So
sincerely appreciate that. If anything, what I like to do is I want to sharpen people, you know, and I
right,
want you to believe whatever you believe for good reasons. And so even if you believe something that I disagree on, I want to give you the resources to be the best version of that so that you can bring that here and we can try that again. You know what I mean?
yeah, yes, yes,
Yeah.
I really like that.
Now,
So I
I
also just wanted to say that I'm
go ahead.
somewhat nervous. I get really nervous around these calls, so I hope it doesn't show too much. But I just wanted to put it out there.
Oh,
It's not my forte, right?
we really appreciate it. I do want to warn you that there is there's always a bit of delay. And so
Yes.
we both need to just practice a little bit of patience with each other and know that we're not always trying to cut each other off. It just may seem like that, and that's okay. You know, the other thing is, people deserve respect. Ideas do not. And if I really don't like an idea, I'll say it. It's not anything on you,
Yes.
but yeah. Elliot, anything before we start?
No, I'm excited to see where you want to go with this.
Yeah, this is the gentlest beginning to a transcendental argument I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I also talk with a lot of presuppositionalists, and I kind of disagree with them. I actually just got kicked off a server because I was criticizing some aspects of it, which I think I really want to go with it in a different route because I know, like, I don't know, like this guy Darth, I don't know, something like
Darth
I
Dawkins.
just yeah, Darth Dawkins. I really hate his way of doing it because it's mainly apologetics, right? It's mainly to just get you to bully you into a
Well,
position.
so apologetics is just the defense of the faith. One of my best
Yes.
friends is an apologist. He actually comes on this show once a month, and we disagree very very much. But this field of study is not so bad.
Yeah.
But like the way people like that do, you know what it makes me think of? It feels like some people will engage with what you're talking about, and other people will say, "Are you calling me a liar? I'm personally upset, and how dare you?" As if that makes
Yeah.
them more or less right, and they're more interested in that. And it happens on both sides. There are people who do what we do, who are just as bad. But
Yeah.
yeah, glad you're here.
It's
So
that's fair argument. Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. So I developed like an argument. So the general gist of it is I'm an existentialist, so I think that the existentialist, at least from Sartre's side, was right in an aspect of the diagnosis of what it means, the death of God. Um, but I think that he got it wrong in that he made the consequences he he criticized some categories, but
So
he still maintained others.
can I ask you a
Uh,
question, Tirsa?
sure,
So when you
sure,
talk about Sartre and the death of God,
yes,
well, so I don't think you mean anyway. Do you know the quote about that? Right, that wasn't Sartre, by the way. That was Nietzsche. But
no, that was Nietzsche. Yeah,
yeah,
no, no, but I'm saying that well, Sartre accepted that it was his base action, um, the notion of there was no God, and because there is no God, we must deal with certain laws of certain categories in an objective sense. Like there's now no ultimate ground for example, for purpose. And then he also had the issue with morality, which he tried to develop
yeah,
an
existentialism.
existential moral.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you got it.
he tried it. I don't think he succeeded, and I think that in general, existentialists recognize that that he didn't. Like there's problems with it, but I think that that's still on a given level, and I try to take it to more abstract level.
Yeah.
So I think that
I do just want
sorry.
to like preface. No, you're good. I do just want to preface because it's going to be a sticking point in my head. Just
No.
just in the future to help sharpen you on this. The God is dead statement is a social statement. When you read the full quote, I've got it up here because I don't want to mistake it. God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. Shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives? Who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become God simply to appear worthy of it? Does that sound like a triumphant God is dead? Because to me, that sounds like deep sadness.
Yes, I think that, as I understand Nietzsche, is that we develop the notion of God, which ultimately must fall down under its own weight, and that void leads to what he considered nihilism, and then he tried to overcome that through the will to power and through his vitalism.
Damn,
Um,
Tirso, you got it. You have done
yeah,
your research.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I like to preface that this is important for me, like in a personal sense, right? It's not merely an argument. It's like it matters, right? Like
Yeah.
these notions to me, they
And
matter, right? So, yeah,
absolutely. And you know that Kierkegaard responded to nihilism as well, and Kierkegaard was a Christian.
yes, yes, with his Night of Faith, I think,
You got it. Okay, but
yeah,
so Tirso, you are the kind of person I would spend 10 million hours talking to about this, but I am interrupting your ability to give us the transcendental argument. So let me shut
yes,
up so you
yes.
can talk.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll try to give it like simple, right? My notion is that nihilism is basically rejecting an ultimate ground for any category, right? So we have like a moral nihilist. That just means that the moral nihilist denies that morality has a ultimate ground, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there is no morality. It may probably mean that it's just like relative or subjective. So it's like closer to anti-realism. It's like uh, for example, the moral nihilist still affirms morality. They just affirm usually in their subjective sense.
Sure.
If we go to an epistemic nihilist, they deny that there's justification, ultimate grounding justification, and they still may affirm like I don't know, like local um, justification, right?
Okay.
So, but I think that if I look into myself, both the moral and the epistemic and the purpose categories are categories, let's say, constructed or related within my own subjectivity, right?
Hmm.
So, so I ask, well, it's my subjectivity itself grounded ultimately, and so if it isn't, then all my practices, all my beliefs, all my reason, ethics, language, art, science, meaning, purpose, values, all of it is tied to subjects, right? To humans, right? And more concretely to myself, right? Not just in the general sense, but to me.
Um,
So if, yeah, sorry, go
no,
ahead.
that's okay. So that is a kind of a narrow view, but I'm happy that so far you're going through. I have a couple of like hangups that I would want to stop and talk about. So either we can stop here and just kind of pick those pieces, or we can
Yeah.
do the whole.
Well, we can do
Okay,
whatever. I have
cool.
no preference.
So Elliot, I know that I absolutely want to dig in multiple places, but is there something that's scratching at your head that you're dying to dive into?
Well, I mean, one thing that's coming to my mind right now, I'm hearing you say a good bit, and I hear this come up a lot in these types of conversations, is the discussion of like ultimate grounding and like the source of these things, and I think that is that is a framing of this conversation that has been hijacked for a really long time, in my opinion, by a particular section of the people who like to have this conversation. And they talk about these things in a way that makes it sound as if like everybody's supposed to have this. But like part
Yeah.
of my side is I'm just kind of saying, I don't think anybody has that.
Well,
I
let's
don't think anybody has grounding.
so well ultimate grounding. And
Yeah,
honestly, that's the thing that I wanted to dive into too. I'm really glad we're on the same page. So like, there's one of the first things we want to pull back and go, ask more about is you talk about ultimate grounding or some ultimate, morals. What does that mean to you?
Yeah.
Well, and tell me if I talk too much because I can go.
Dude,
I'm not concise in anything.
my friend, there are three of us who will all do the same thing. So as long you're among good company.
So I think that the way that I view it has to do with the category of objective, right? Like, so I think that there's like the tension between the subjective and the objective. So, like for example, logic. Logic is thought to be objective, right? It's normative, it's binding, it's universal. It's usually.
Well, so that is interesting. I think that less than half of it is objective, the way that we think about objective, because I think that deductive philosophy is objective, right? True premises leading to true conclusions. But when you get into everything else, it is subjective, and so even in philosophy itself, we're dealing with subjective.
I would say in its application, there are subjective elements, but I just want to focus on the formal aspect of it, right?
Okay.
Like the formal aspect.
You mean like the structure?
Objective. Yes, or the principles themselves, like like even reasoning. For example, philosophy would die if reason were normative, right? Like because the normativity of reason, it's what binds reason, and so there are people who disagree. So I'm not discounting those aspects, and I'm not even saying that everything requires ultimate grounding. I
mean, that's fair. Like brushing your teeth doesn't need ultimate grounding, right? So I think we agree.
Well, I'm not sure I would look at it that way, but because I think that's a logical action, right? So, but I would say, like, for example, I can deal with purpose not being objective, right? Like, okay, like maybe there's no purpose, objective purpose, because we generally tend to see like purpose being something of subjective. That we wouldn't say it's objective, it's subjective, right? Or preference, right?
So just so that we're on the same page, are you saying, because we're swapping between saying objective and ultimate, and do those mean the same thing to you?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Yes. What? Cool. Yes. That's what I'm thinking, right? Like I'm thinking more in lines of. I use the term absolute, but I think maybe this is problematic in a rhetorical sense for people. But that's kind of what I'm thinking, right? Like, like when I think about logic, I think, well, logic applies here and in China 200 years ago, and there's no place, there's no
conceivable universe.
There's just not that, right?
Right.
So in that sense, and I think that's the most problematic in a philosophical sense, the consequence of biting the bullet in relation to how I'm thinking, right? Because to me, we can think logically, right? Mm-hmm. We can reason, and usually dialogue is about that, right? Going beyond our own local subjectivity and grasping at some truth or something like that. Which goes beyond ourselves and is binding, right? It's true.
Well, I don't know if I fully agree, but I think that'll take us on a tangent. So I'll just put my little flag and say not fully following personally, but go ahead.
Okay, so at least philosophically, right? We can have dialogues about different things that don't that's the other aspect. Don't necessarily fall into that, like the aesthetics, right? We can have a dialogue of I don't know, like whether Madonna is better than another artist, right? And maybe that doesn't require like an objective truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we're arguing about philosophy, well, that's kind of taking like a basic thing, right? Like
Right.
we're trying to discover the truth of things. So I think that my general point is that regardless of whether some categories within the subjectivity could be ungrounded in that objective ultimate sense, the question, I think the connection is if atheism is true, then the subject itself is grounded, and all of the categories within the subject, including the objective ones, are then ungrounded, and that's a hard bullet to bite. I'm not at least in this. I'm not arguing that is not possible. I think it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Let me repeat back to you what you said to make sure that I'm on the same page, and so that the audience is on the same page as well. So, sure. From what I get from what you're saying, you believe that, okay, not everything needs to be grounded in some objective, from higher or whatever greater truth. There are lots of things like, having a favorite actor or actress or favorite music, aesthetic choices that don't really have anything to do with objectivity. But when we are talking about philosophy and we're talking about, the nature of the universe and our relation with each other and that universe that we're in, we do come across some hard and steady, true things, we hope. And it sounds like you're saying that if we don't have an objective to ground us, or it sounds like you're saying that we need to have access to an ultimate something in order to be grounded in our beliefs. Is that true? Do you think that we need to have access to an ultimate thing?
Ultimately grounded, yeah. I think there is something that can be said as to what the subject itself can validate. But I think I can separate it in two ways, right? The first one is just the logical consequence, right? Which I think atheism entails a comprehensive nihilism, right? That it's total in regards to the subject, right? All of the categories in the subject.
So I think atheists can be nihilists, but I've met some really wild atheists. I think that for the people that you're talking to, which is us, we're going to agree. But I do just want to let you know, not all atheists. Like there are some really, pseudo-spiritual kind of, anyway, panentheism, I think, is a kind of atheism.
But really? I would consider myself a pantheist, but I would say precisely that.
No, panentheism.
Sorry?
Panentheism. It's different.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, but anyway.
No. I am a panentheist.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So hold on just a second. So you're looking for, we're talking about, I want to make sure like we're not losing the thread because you're saying a lot of exciting things too. So we're talking about ultimate grounding of what? Let's pick a thing. How about maybe morality? Can we?
Yeah, okay. Let's say, I'll put it that way. Human morality, right?
Okay, sure.
Because if we prefix the human aspect to it, to the category, then you can see my point, right? Like morality is human morality, reasoning is human reasoning. Whatever is beyond the human, like we don't have access to it. Like it's not relevant to us.
Yeah, and also if we were to imagine, I imagine like an endangered species. If they had a morality, then it would be in their best interest to destroy all humans because we're wiping them off the earth.
Yeah, but then, I would say even that notion, it's still a human notion, right? It's the human idea
No, fair
of
enough. Fair enough. Fair
another
enough.
thing.
You're right. You're right. You're right. Okay.
So,
So go ahead.
so in that sense, if the human itself is formally ungrounded, then all the categories, ungrounded in the ultimate sense, right? In the
So
what we're calling objective sense.
okay, hold on a second, because I keep getting back to that.
Yes.
Ungrounded objectively. What does that mean? I
Um,
feel like a broken record, or that I'm maybe not just understanding. So that's why I keep asking. What does that mean?
it means, at least for me, that there's the conjunction of the objective category, universality, bindingness, it's just absoluteness, right? Or what we may call universality.
Well,
Uh,
hold on. So grounding and absoluteness and universality, if they're all synonyms for each other, they all just mean the same thing. I still don't have a clear understanding of what it means to be ungrounded.
um, Take, for example, let's go the epistemic route, like justification, right?
Yeah.
So if I ask you, like, how do you know whatever thing, right?
Yeah.
You're going to appeal to something beyond what you're claiming in order to justify, right? You can say, oh, well, I know the Bible, for example, and I don't believe in the Bible, but you would say, well, I don't believe in the Bible because, I don't know, like, history, right? Like, history doesn't show that. We can say, well, how do you know that? And we go on and on and on and on. So, and we can go into an epistemic regress, infinite regress, and that's taken generally to be like problematic. Like we may disagree about that. That's why I divided it into two parts. First, the establishment of the consequence, and then the whether that's problematic or not. But now in the establishment of it, well, it's either an infinite regress or it will be grounded in something that will be ultimately grounded, which we cannot go beyond, and either that would be because it's self-justified or because justification itself doesn't apply to it. Um, so,
Yeah.
um, so I think that's the general gist of nihilism and non-nihilism, right? Like
Okay.
that's what it
Hang
would
on
be
just
like.
a second,
With
Tirso.
Elliot, go for it.
Tirso, let me jump in for a second because I've been listening and I've been trying to figure out what might be the best route to go forward, because there's a lot of different ideas here that are
Yeah.
being mixed up together, which is good, by the way. I want to tell people this. Some people think they are supposed to go find a label and a philosophical idea and just adhere to everything about it and not ever take in anything from anything else. No, fuck that. Mix a bunch of stuff together and come up with something new. But here is a point that I think is probably really important for us to stick on for just a second. Are you familiar with Munchausen's trilemma?
Trilemma, yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, are you familiar
hold on?
with
Hold on. Can you describe that? Because I can't.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I probably
yeah.
heard it, but I don't remember it.
I think once I start explaining,
Okay,
you'll
Elliot,
be
go
like,
for it.
oh yeah. So it's
Yeah,
this understanding in philosophy that basically all of our epistemology, everything at the end of the day seems to come down to one of these three options, that it is just kind of a presupposition that's asserted, and then because we start at that finite point, we can build from there, right? There's also this idea that the justification for any particular piece of information is because of this infinite chain that just goes back forever. And then the third prong of this is this idea that it's actually because of the coherence of all of it. So like the first chapter in the book makes sense because the last chapter in the book also makes sense and ties it all up together. So these are called foundationalism, coherentism, and
okay.
infinitism, is what that kind of comes from. The reason I brought this up, though, is because oftentimes in this conversation, we are not giving equal weight to each of these. And so, for instance, like just a second ago, Tirso, you said, hey, man, actually, like if you don't have just this thing where you start from and then kind of move forward, well, it's going to be an infinite chain, and that's not that's not good. Well, we actually don't have any reason to accept just that premise right there, you know? And if you're relying on that and you're saying, hey, you can't have an infinite regress in your system because it doesn't work, right? Well, all three of these are actually on the same level. But what's more interesting, in my opinion, is found herentism. Something
Yes.
that a philosopher named Susan Hawke came up with fairly recently. Is this something that hasn't been discussed for a long time? I think she did a paper on it in like the early 2000s. But basically, it's combining the concept of coherentism and the concept of foundationalism and saying, if you put these two together in a certain way, then it actually does give us an answer past this trilemma. Now,
Yes.
some people disagree. So obviously there's still conversation about it. But I do think that's an important point for us to stick on. If all three of these
Yes.
prongs are on equal footing, we can't just cut something off just because we say, oh, well, there's an infinite regress, or, oh, well, you're just asserting that. It's like, you kind of have to pick one of those routes right now. So I don't know. Did any of that help with anything?
Uh, I agree with you. I actually I did read that article, and I consider myself. Yeah, I think that's the proper solution, so to say, to the problem. Yet I think this is on the other. Let's say the second part of the argument, like the consequences of it, because sure, like you can say like. Well, there's no foundation, right? Well, no ultimate foundation. Well, it's no foundation really. So you can say I can still be justified, even if this is not so, right? But that would have to be like the consequence. Like that would be like, well, I can be a nihilist and still have a justification, right? Or I can still have morality, right? Or I can still have purpose. So
Yeah.
I think that has
Well, that's
with the other
definitely what the
aspect of it.
existentialists thought.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry?
Oh, I was just saying that's definitely what the existentialists thought.
Yes, yes, that was the at least I also have like a little pet peeve on that. I think that existentialism is thought of as in the atheist sense, but to me, like the most existentialist thinkers were not atheists, right? The atheist line is just basically Sartre, Beauvoir, and maybe Camus or Heidegger. Like this question about Heidegger. The rest of it like weren't atheists, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the point, right? So how do we live without this ultimate foundation? And there are problems, and there may be solutions, right? But that would be the second part of it. My way of thinking is just, well, yeah, we can deal with how far can we go in this anti-foundationalism. But my point is that it does require to bite the bullet of a comprehensive anti-foundationalism, because the thing that ties those categories together is the human. And if the human itself is not foundationally founded, let's say, then we must bite the bullet that all the human categories, human reason, human ethics, human whatever, are then non-foundationally grounded, right? So we must,
In fairness,
and that to me is definition of nihilism.
Yeah, real quick. In fairness, like, I mean, the consequences of a particular belief are not indicative of whether or not the belief is true, right?
Yes.
So, like, if it just is the case, right, that there is no ultimate foundation, there is no grounding, whatever that means, right, for all these things, well, that if we're all bummed out about that and we go through this whole, oh, well, we don't have a way to live society, blah, 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 we'll stop making cars and TVs, whatever, right? Like, if that is the consequences, like, okay, well, we deal with that, right? Like, after we get past the whole, is this the case, right? If we're interested in the truth of the matter, well, then, yeah, we do just have to bite the bullet sometimes. And if it is the case that, hey, we don't have enough resources to save both this puppy and this baby in a burning building, what do we do? How do we live our lives, And that's fine. I mean, that's just what we're all doing, right? My kind of feeling on all of this, though, Tirso, is just slightly a little bit further, which is that I'm not just saying I think that that I don't have this ultimate grounding or anything, right? I'm saying that nobody does. And everything we've already constructed is in this, kind of framework. And I think I can point that out to people. I think I can demonstrate that to people, Like when people talk to me about how their morality must come from God, and I go, oh, okay, well, then your morality is subjective because it comes from the mind of a God.
And then that's God's opinion.
Yeah, right. That's just God's stance on stuff, right? So, like, that's fine that you're saying that, but that just is subjective. So I just go just even a little bit further to just say, like, hey, look, like, I just don't think anybody's using that construct. I just don't think anybody has that ultimate grounding thing. And then from there, well, that's the part that I think is the most important, right? Which is now we both have our champions, we both have our fighters. Let's put them in the ring and battle it out. And I think when you construct this system of morality, when you utilize the societies around us in some ways, I think it's worse. And I think we can just demonstrate that, right? Now, go through this whole like, oh, well, what do you mean by worse? And it's like, I'll use your metrics. In the God-based morality, there is so much overlap with just a general utilitarian understanding. I'll just use your metrics for a little bit. And by the morality that is laid out in the Bible, I don't even think it's good, man. I think it leads to bad stuff. So when we shake out the moralities and we actually just say, hey, what are the consequences of this? Let's just bite the bullet either way. If God exists, then all of these consequences come from that. If God doesn't exist, if there is no ultimate purpose, then all of these consequences come from that. Cool. Let's put those up on the board and just say, which one of these is a better world? And I really do. I think time and time again, you get a better world whenever there is not God in the hypothesis. So that's just me.
Tirso, I want you to get the chance to respond because go for it.
Yeah, I let's see how I want. I would agree that, for example, that you don't like an idea doesn't make it untrue, right? I do think there's some pragmatic aspect to whether an idea is personally useful or not, which is valid. But I would take it further. Like my point is not like, well, nihilism is a bummer, so it's not true. That would just take it to the I don't know, to an aesthetic preference or something like that. Like I don't like it, or it makes me feel bad or something like that. No. I think my point is more radical than that. I think even the notion of truth and knowledge and logic and reasoning we must also be nihilists about that, because those are still tied to human reasoning, human logic, and so on. And that is, I think.
Yeah,
hold on.
Let me push back real quick on that. If are you saying if all human beings Thanos snapped out of existence at the end of this sentence, are you saying that 1 + 1 would not equal 2?
Well, I would say we would have no way to ground that, because I can ground it.
Does it matter whether or not we would have a way to determine it as individual subjects? The question is about whether or not it changes based on the existence of people. does my opinion about 1 + 1 = 2 change whether or not that is the equation and the resulting consequence? That's what's important.
That's what I would still reaffirm the same answer. Like, we have no way to affirm that, right? We
I
cannot
mean,
affirm what would not be the case.
we
have no access.
hold on. We can. It's just not satisfactory to you. So we can talk about
I
numbers, and
don't think.
we can use numbers, we can do math, and we can see consistent results, and we can test it. And every time that we're using it, it continues to reaffirm itself as both useful pragmatically and just apparently on its face true to some degree, right? So if that's not good enough for you,
But
that's
still,
fine. But don't say that that's not grounded.
It's not that it's not good enough for me. I don't think my position is. Maybe I'm not conveying it properly, because in how I see it, that is still you're still tying that together, and you're still accessing that through the mind, right? So you're
Yeah.
still clarify. I'm an idealist, right?
Okay.
I'm not a subjective idealist. I'm what's generally called absolute idealist. So I still affirm like objectivity, and even if the that's why I also kind of hesitated to use the term human, but I think that's useful to get people to understand a little bit what I mean.
Well, it's incredibly useful. The first thing that I thought about is human morality. Would human morality exist
Yes.
if humans stopped existing?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the category of human is still not foundational enough for the self. I would tie that to a self, right? Maybe not a human, because human already has like notions of, I don't know, like biology and stuff like that.
Oh,
which is
no.
useful. I think useful.
Oh God, Tirso, I think you just invented transcendental veganism. Oh no.
Yeah, probably.
Do you know what you've unleashed on the world, Tirso?
I'll just preface that I was raised by hippies, so maybe that explains a lot, right?
I feel like there's number one. I want you to call back. It sounds, and especially when Elliot's on, because Elliot is able to engage with you on a higher level than I can. That's why I have him on. And I would love to see more of these conversations, but we have been on the line for a while, and I do definitely want to take other calls, but I would love to wrap this up in a way that helps people who are watching grow. And so I'd love for both of you to take a chance to talk about what just happened. And how, right? So why don't you go first, and then we'll let you go, and I'll let Elliot finish.
Well, I don't know what to say.
Oh, no worries.
I don't know. I just.
That's okay. I was just thinking of like summarizing what the conversation was about.
Yeah, I think the conversation has to do with whether there's something that grants in this case, the one watching it, like personally, is there something that grounds me in an objective sense, that whether I can use subjective categories, even if I am a subject, even if I am a local subject, like can I reason, like are there truths, are there objective values and stuff like that? And I think that if atheism is true, then we must bite the bullet and say that none of these categories are truth, and they are local to the subject, to the I, and bite that bullet, whatever that may leave us.
I think that's very well said. Elliot, do you want to? How do you feel? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just say that, like, I think there is a lot of really interesting conversation in this space. Things like anti-moral realism is really important to dive into more. I think what we have at the end of the day is a handful of things that are about as good as we can get. And it's not super satisfying. They're not perfect in any sense, but the goal should be to have as few of those things that can answer the absolute most about everything around us. And I think we have that. I think we have that when we get past the questions of like grounding of logic. Like logic is just a description of what it means to be in the category of existence. You know, that's fine. That's a true dichotomy. Non-existence, existence. What it means to be in existence means to adhere to the laws of logic. From there, we just need to get past the question of hard solipsism, which, hey, again, those aren't perfect answers. I get you. It's not it, but with those, I think we can get pretty much every answer that we want. And I don't see another system that gives us anything better.
So
yeah,
Elliot, I'm going to push back on you, but
Yeah,
we're going to let you go because I'm paying for this call.
yeah.
But thank you for calling in, brother. I look forward to you calling back.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thank you. Yeah.
That was the nicest transcendental caller I've ever talked
I
to
know.
by a lot. So for people who are watching and are wondering why we were skating around the topic so much, because if you've seen, people like Darth Dawkins call into shows, the idea is that what people like that say, presuppositional apologetics is another word for the transcendental argument. And it's that, if you don't have God to give you logic and reason, then you would not be able to make sense of the world. And since you have logic and reason, then that is evidence of God. So you using logic and reason is proof of God. And it feels like the argument from Ollie Oxenfree, right? But when you put that aside, practice some humility. I did see someone in the chat who said that empathy is worthless. Call into the show. I would love to hear that.
Ooh, yeah.
But
Interesting.
I did want to put in my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when we're talking about morality, we're talking about it often as if we're trying to build the car while we're also driving down the road. Right. Mm-hmm. And so how do we build a moral system? How do we justify our moral behavior? How do we, compare what is true, what is not true, or what is subjective and objective? What's the best way to build an engine versus what is going to work?
Sure.
Right. And we can argue about that, but we also need to recognize that we're in a car and we're driving already. We live in a society that has already been built, that has already laid out moral principles due to tons of different conflicting religions and, beliefs and lack of beliefs. We are acting in an empathetic way. We are behaving in a moral way. Are they consistent? No. Are they all perfectly useful? Hell no. But we do have a structure. We are in a car. We can agree that the car is not working great, but the car is running. And so for us to say that we need to have a perfect engine before we can ever get off the ground does not make sense in the real world.
No, I would agree. Yeah. I would agree with that. And that's why I would say the goal should be totally. We don't have a perfect engine. And that's my pushback to the presup argument, right? Oftentimes is their argument is, well, you have to have a perfect engine before you can start, all of this other stuff that you're doing. And I'm saying, well, no, wait a second. A, no, we don't. And B, you don't. Nobody does. And I think that's where the answer of we bring it back to as few assumptions as possible, right? As little of an engine as we possibly get. The most basic engine that will keep the car running, and we build from there. And that's where the laws of logic and hard solipsism.
But even in that, there's this kind of assumption that we need to build an engine because we don't have one.
Okay, fair enough, and that's fair. That's not what I'm trying to convey.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to convey is to build the best engine.
Yeah.
This is what we should do.
Right.
We currently are using an engine already. I think that adheres to most of these principles I'm talking about. But I think there's
We can do a
shitting on
hell of a
engines,
lot better.
you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. That's fair.
And for people who are watching, why are they talking about engines? We're talking about government. We're talking about moral systems. We're talking about
Right.
what we teach our children and future generations, how we view ourselves as good or bad people, right? All of these structures of what we think of as the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. All of that is that engine that we're talking
Right.
about. And so how we build that, it feels like everyone's talking about it like we're not already on the road driving. We are driving right now. We are working with something, and it is deeply flawed, but it is existing. And
Yeah.
I feel like that is actually what snapped me out of that kind of that aporia, right? That kind of fully the bottom dropped out of your moral understanding of the world when you hit that nihilist place. Like I felt like I was in free fall. And then I looked out of the world around me and I went, oh, well, it's here and people are
Right.
doing stuff.
Right.
And I think it's important to recognize that. But regardless, I do have one quick nitpick before we move on to John. I also want to put the phone number out. So let me put the phone number out, then we're going to nitpick, and then we'll take the next caller. Because I definitely want to talk to more people, especially people who will say that empathy is worthless. Come on, let's go. Let's talk about it. 412-SKEPGEN. That's 412-753-7436. Or you can go to tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. That's tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. Our call screener is waiting to talk to you, and we would love to hear from you.
Oh.
What's
the nitpick?
I will fight you.
Oh.
Elliot, existence is not a category. It's not an adjective. It is not a checkbox. You do not get to check existing as a descriptor of a thing.
Do you not agree that existence and non-existence are a true dichotomy?
So I think that non-existence is incoherent. That's like multiplying or dividing by zero.
Okay, so hang on. That we can get to that. That's a step here. That's fine. I'm fine with that. Just the same as true nothing, right? Nothing and thing, they are opposites. They are definite dichotomies. There is no other option there. It either is existent or it's not existent. It either is a thing or it's no thing.
I actually, no, I don't think there's evidence of nothing. We have no examples of nothing.
Well, so that's fine, but in a philosophical understanding, in a logical understanding, what this means is that there has to be criteria that is non-overlapping for those categories. It does not matter what the criteria is for non-existence in this case necessarily.
But even conceptually, like the empty set is still a set. Like non-existence.
I don't disagree with any of that. I just don't think that pushes back on what I'm saying.
No. That's why it's a nitpick. I just want to point out, and for people who are wondering, Eric, why are you taking such a strong view of this? So the way that I think about this for people who like play video games, you think about like a wireframe model that's created for a character. And that wireframe model is given hinges and joints. And then you start putting onto that wireframe all of the adjectives, all of the descriptors that make that thing, right? You put the textures on, you put the colors on, right? It gets a face and it gets hair and it gets fingers and it gets, animations and all of that, right? In the same way, if we think of the concept of a chair or a cat, using this cat, you have the idea of a cat, sure, but you need to start layering adjectives onto it, descriptors, black cat, old cat, young cat, fat cat, skinny cat, right? All of these things are adjectives that are describing the cat. Correct. But existing does not describe the cat. Existing is the wireframe upon which all of the adjectives get to rest.
Okay, so I'm with you there. Let's take that just a little bit further.
Okay, hit me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what does
John? Thank you for waiting.
What does that mean about everything that exists? It has that wireframe. Thus, there is a specific set of criteria that applies to everything that falls into what it means to exist. That criteria, I think, is in part the laws of logic. What it means to exist is to adhere to the laws of logic. That is part of the criteria. So that is what's important about that. The reason that this is interesting, in my opinion, is because it destroys the concept of the presupposition. Because by definition, for something to exist, it has to adhere to certain criteria.
Yeah.
Because logically speaking, it has to have non-overlapping criteria with non-existence. So non-existence can't adhere to the laws of logic, which is why it doesn't make sense.
I think that you're being a presuppositionalist here.
Well, kind of, but you kind of have to be.
Not necessarily. I don't.
You kind of have to be a presuppositionalist. That's the whole point about Munchausen's trilemma.
Well, is
that there's not really an option. You kind of have to just pick something.
So hold on just a second. Like, okay, I'm
excited.
There's that entire I forget what the fallacy is around it. False attribution of causation.
Yeah.
That's it, right? So the idea that, there is a very real link between ice cream sales and drownings.
Right.
Ice cream does not make you drown, but it usually happens in the summer. Summer doesn't make you drown, but people who are eating ice cream are more likely to be swimming. And so those things being correlated does not mean that they are causal, right? Eating ice cream will not make you drown. It's just those things happen to go together. And so if we're talking about things that exist, it so happens that all things that exist so far adhere to the laws of logic. And so I don't want to define existence as something that necessarily and definitionally is adhering to the laws of logic. But I do recognize that so far that seems to be the case. But if you say that, then you're presupposing a thing into existence, and that doesn't feel comfortable to me.
I respect that 100%, and I think, yes, this is where we need to be careful with our terminology, which is one of the things, honestly, that was when next time Tirso calls back in, we'll definitely talk about this.
Yeah,
is like the idea, for instance, when he was saying something about like. Well, hey, yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't think we have a way to determine if 1 + 1 still equals 2 after all people are gone, right? Well, my response is, okay, fine, we may not have a way to determine, but all of the available evidence seems to point to the fact that, yes, it will still do
everything.
that, right?
Everything seems to bend to the laws of logic. Sure.
Okay, so the nuance then is that the available evidence seems to be currently that for things to exist, they have to adhere to the laws of logic, because that prevents us from being in that black swan fallacy area, and it prevents us from that ergo
post hoc
ergo propter. Yeah.
So we will definitely continue this either on or off air, because I'm enjoying this, but I know we're losing people. So that said, what did we want to? The whole reason, the whole thing that we seeded the show with. I'm glad. I'm always happy to have these conversations. I adore this. But also, are we meat robots? That was kind of the original premise, and I definitely want to talk to. We have a caller who wants to talk about free will. John in Canada. John, you're live on the show.
How are you? Eric, how are you?
Hey, doing well. Say hi to Elliot.
Hello, Elliot.
Hey, John.
All right. What's going on, John? What's on your mind?
Before we get started, I just want to say two things. A, you've won that sweater before, and B, does the cat have a name?
Yeah. So first off, I really like this sweater, and I am too poor to only wear things once. But I'm glad that you remembered that I wore it. That means that it was memorable. And number two, yeah, I will tell you this cat's name. Do you have? Well, you have a second. You're on my show, so I'll tell you. When V and I adopted this little one-eyed cat, she had some serious injuries, and she suffered some damage to her face. That's why she only has one eye. And because of that, she has something called chronic rhinitis, which means she sneezes all of the time. Now, we originally wanted to call her Empress Philippa Giorgio because we're Trekkies. But because she's our little sneezer, I've been calling her Booger in Spanish. So we've been calling her Moco. And that's essentially what her name is at this point. But if you look in the chat, people still call her Georgie because they've been fans for so long. They remember that. But either way. Anyway, John, what did you want to talk about?
Okay, so I heard about free will. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that there is a God, and it's the God of the Bible. Mm-hmm. Would that negate or predetermine free will?
Neither.
Program us? What?
Neither. There are Christians. There are Christians who don't believe in free will.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, how can there not be free will? You can make a choice, can you?
Well, I think the Bible kind of gives you contradictory views on this, which is why John Calvin, came out with his whole, movement that then a bunch of, churches and views spawned from. I would say it really, of course, depends on your version of the God that you're talking about. If your God is all-knowing, right, and your God has the ability to, intercede and does regularly in the lives of people, then I would say, yeah, it does seem to kind of negate the concept of free will. But it doesn't necessarily, right? God, just the existence of a God in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean that free will doesn't exist. Also, a lack of a God doesn't necessarily mean that free will or like destiny or whatever don't exist. So it just all kind of depends on your construction.
I see. But isn't it true that in the Bible, God hardened Pharaoh's heart?
Yeah, that doesn't seem like Pharaoh had free will.
Yeah, there is definitely that story. Yeah, but there is other stories where it seems to indicate God gives people choices and they choose to do, like the story of Jonah. Right. The whole reason that Jonah gets swallowed by the whale is because God says to Jonah, like, hey, go do this thing. And Jonah's like, yeah, I don't know if I feel like that, God. So then he went and he did something else. Now, God ultimately made the decision for him by making him be swallowed by a whale and then spitting him up on the shores of the town that God wanted him to go to, right. Basically. So, but you also technically, at least, Jonah had the ability to choose.
Yeah. And if we're in the Bible, also you have God hanging out with the devil and making a bet about whether or not Job was going to make the right choices, and so he sent all of this pain and anguish, destroying Job's entire life to see what Job would do. That implies choice. You also have the story of Abraham and Isaac, right? God saying, I'm going to give you a faith test. You need to kill your son for me, and the idea would be that Abraham maybe had a choice, but we're doing our best to try and give you the Christian side, but we're not Christians. So it feels kind of funny for us to do that. But we're still happy to talk to you about it. What's your take on free will?
Well, to some extent, free will kind of exists. Okay, for instance, let's say you want to eat ice cream. You feel the urge to eat ice cream. You didn't create that urge. You didn't choose to have it. It's there, but you can choose whether or not to act on it. Correct?
So I don't know that you do have that choice. Is part of the thing. So for me, I feel like if you walk that chain back further, then you find you're in the same boat as where that urge to eat ice cream came from. Like one of the thought experiments I've heard done, a bunch, is this basically this idea of saying like, hey, think of a movie or a TV show that you really love, you know, whatever it is, right? Like for me, the one that comes to my mind right now is Cheers. I don't know why, it just is the case, right? But then you say, well, think of the next TV show or movie, and you obviously come up with an answer. Okay, for me, it's Batman Beyond. You know, cool, great. Why didn't I think of Batman Beyond first? Was there at any point in time a conscious ability for me to say, yes, I do love The Shawshank Redemption. What a great movie. But let's not choose that one in this moment. Let's instead pick this TV show that I haven't watched in years. Like,
Well,
why did I make that choice? It doesn't seem to be anything. It seems to be in the same place from the urge to eat ice cream for me.
yeah. Can I reduce that down a bit?
Mm-hmm. Please.
Okay.
Please.
So, John, just imagine that you're sitting at a table and there's a red button and a green button, and you choose what button to press, right? And let's say you choose the green button. If I were to rewind time and have you do it again, would your choice be different?
Well, it depends what the stakes are.
Pushing the red button or the green button?
Yeah, what are the stakes?
You get to push one or the other.
Yeah.
So,
Nothing more than just that.
Nothing happens. There's no difference.
No.
No difference.
Nope.
Well,
one is red and one is green.
Right.
Well, then I choose the one that's aesthetically pleasing to me.
Okay, cool. So if I were to rewind time and play that out again, is there a chance you would choose the other one?
Yeah, because it's a 50-50 chance because there's nothing at stake.
Not really. It's not 50-50 because you know what's aesthetically pleasing to you.
Right. That doesn't change.
Yeah. So what's interesting, John, is I went down this entire rabbit hole years ago about what happens when people get brain injury, head injuries, specifically to parts of their brain that are in charge of memory. And so you have people who get short-term memory loss, right? After about 30 seconds, they kind of just reset. They lose all memory of what just happened. And so we actually have a real world examples of people, who are maybe in the hospital, who are reliving the same moment over and over and over again. Do they do the same thing every time? And from what we've seen, yeah, they do the same thing every time. They ask the exact same questions. They set up the exact same way. It's bizarre. It's weird, but all else being the same when you run it back, there's not a 50-50 chance of anything. They repeat themselves over and over again. Mm-hmm. And it's terrifying. But I wish that I could tell you that maybe if we went back in time a million times and so you could make that red button, green button choice over and over again. I think the evidence points to the fact that you would push the same button every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's interesting. I did not know that.
Isn't that horrifying?
Yeah. And it's fascinating because what happens all the time, we're all doing this on a regular basis, right? And I get why this is uncomfortable for people, but we are reasoning after the fact. We are engaging in actions and behaviors on a regular basis, mm-hmm. and then telling ourselves a story afterwards as to what justifies that previous action. We are constantly living in the past, trying to tell ourselves why we did things that we've already done. And yeah, it's kind of weird when you think about it because it starts to kind of degrade a lot of the things that we have built our lives around. Like, for instance, there's this really awesome notion out there, that the reason that they're so successful is because they woke up every morning and they said, I could fuck off, but no, I'm going to work hard and I'm going to build shit and I'm going to make stuff happen. And
pull myself up by my bootstraps.
Yeah, they didn't though. They in reality they actually didn't, you know? And on the flip side, the other person that is incapable of getting up today, that is laying in bed all day staring at the wall just thinking, "Why can't I do anything? Why can't I do anything? Why am I have those times. I am not it is not my choice. It is the physical ramifications of being a human being in this construction. Like, it just, some days I wake up and I'm like, hey man, I don't feel good. And I'm going to lay around all day and I can't get anything done and my head feels fuzzy and I know I got shit to do, but I just can't do it. I just can't motivate myself. Am I choosing in that moment to do that? Am I just a lazy piece of shit that, just isn't successful or beneficial to society? Like, no, actually, I'm just, a slave to the same emotions and chemicals that everybody else is, man. So it
I
takes away a lot of that blame, and it takes away a lot of that praise. And I think that bums people out, honestly, because I think there are a lot of people out there that want the praise and also want to blame. And maybe that just isn't the case.
honestly, I think that is a supposition that John has. John, do you know what meritocracy is?
Mm.
No, I don't.
So meritocracy is the idea that you have what you have because you deserve it. If you have a lot of wealth, it's because you did things to make you wealthy. And if you were in poverty, it's because you did things to make yourself poor. And that, the cream rises to the top, that kind of thing. And so I think what you're hearing is you're hearing Elliot talk about free will and how that impacts meritocracy, right? There have been times that you've called in and it sounded like, yeah, you were saying that, people are either going to work to get to where they are going to be, or they're going to be lazy and bad things are going to happen to them. And what Elliot is saying is he thinks that if we don't have free will, then maybe meritocracy is just not real. Maybe it's just an illusion that we put on ourselves and each other. What do you think about that?
I see, but I want to switch topics for a brief moment.
Yeah.
Given our conversations, I've been having my doubts about the faith, but my biggest fear is the fear of hell. I just can't shake it.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions?
No, it's terrifying, man.
Yeah, I totally don't fault you for that, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my advice to you is don't be in a rush to say that you have the answer. The most honest thing a person can do is to say, I don't know. And I say that because it's hard to say, I don't know. It feels bad to say, I don't know. And so for you to have the courage to say, I don't know is a really big deal to me. So get comfortable in that I don't know space and have good reasons if you do change your beliefs for whatever you change them to. You know what I mean? In my experience, fear of hell changed slowly over time. In the same way that, like, when I prayed, eventually I stopped praying because it didn't do the same thing for me. I knew that no one was listening, but I still prayed. And it wasn't for a while afterwards that wound up kind of going away. And I think that over time, when you live in a world without hell getting dangled over your head, getting away from it makes that get better.
So are you saying that you prayed for something and it didn't happen and it dissuaded you?
No. I'm saying that it didn't matter if the prayer came true, but just I prayed because for a long time I thought someone was listening, and then when after I was like, okay, maybe no one's listening, I still prayed anyway, just because I kind of hoped, or I tried and I kept trying, and eventually I stopped praying because not only did I in my mind know that no one was listening, but eventually in my heart I knew it too, and so prayer stopped being useful for me. And in the same way, I think you might at some point in your mind know that hell isn't real, but your heart still thinks it is, because we got these lizard brains that don't want to let go of shit. And so just know this, right? For now, is being afraid of hell a good enough reason to stay?
That's a very good question.
And I think that I think that this might be the right time to think about that question, because I don't think there's a right answer. I think there's your answer, and what your answer is going to be right for you. You know?
Okay.
All right. Hey.
Thank you, John. I mean, thank you, Eric.
Elliot, I talked the entire time. I want you to have the chance to respond.
No. The only thing I'll throw in here, which, you know, John, I'm sure you've probably heard us mention them before, but wonderful places like Recovering from Religion and the Secular Therapy Project. There's also this amazing person named Dr. Marlene Winnell. She's actually the person who coined the term religious trauma, and she puts on the Conference on Religious Trauma. And yeah, she's also a really great resource to look into for all of this.
This is exactly the right time for resources. Good call,
man. Yeah. Those organizations and those people are phenomenal, and they are not going to try and push you in any one direction. What they are going to do is use fact-based, proven methodology to help you deal with the feelings and the emotions that you're having, you know, because they are real, and you need to address them head on and not just say, well, if I just behave in a certain way, if I'm just good enough, daddy won't punish me anymore. No, fuck that. You know, you're a real person, and you're allowed to be upset, and you're allowed to feel these things, because you know what? Like Eric said, yeah, man, it's terrifying. And so if you weren't still afraid of that to a degree, John,
that'd be
kind
crazy.
of be questioning, man.
Yeah.
I'd be like, dude, what the fuck did you do right? You know, I've been out of this shit for years, and every so often I'll still go like, you know, like it gets you, man. But yeah, look up those places and just go back and watch this and rewind it and get those resources. I know they're in the chat and the descriptions as well. So,
you know, a long time ago, I coined this kind of phrase. I haven't used it in a long time, but that awful pit of your feeling stomach that you have when you don't know anymore, I think that's what Eureka feels like. So
okay, well,
I think you're having a Eureka moment, and I think that's fantastic. Anyway, John,
okay,
take care of yourself, brother.
You too, bye-bye.
I don't want to give like too much ammo to the religious side, Eric. You know, I struggle with these moments, but I feel like if we can get people just a little bit further away from the intense dogmatism, right? We can get them just a little bit further. That's beneficial. So here's my argument from the religious side on why you shouldn't be afraid of hell, is because logically speaking, God must be all good. God has to be a perfect being,
really,
by definition. And what that means is that this God would never engage in such actions as to eternally consciously torment somebody, because that, by very definition, is unloving and unjust. It is not within the character of this God. And this God could not exist unless his character adheres to perfection. I am not the person that has come up with that argument. There are some Christian philosophers over the years that have talked about that. So go look into that. If anybody is a believer and you're like, well, I still want to believe in God, I don't know about this hell stuff. Go look into stuff like that, because at the very least, you know, maybe it'll help.
Yeah. What's the view? Annihilationism, right? Annihilationism. That's what they're called, right? Annihilationist Christians who don't believe in hell. But we've got our own thoughts. We can do our best to represent other people's views, but we can't be them. So in the end, we're just trying not to straw man people who aren't here. We've got multiple believers calling in the last half hour. I want to make sure that we jump in and talk to them. Steve in Florida is the person who I just casually looked at the chat and I saw somebody said that empathy is useless. And I was like, oh God, yes. But I didn't get the chance to read anything else. Steve, thank you for calling in.
Oh, can you hear me well?
I had to turn the volume up so much for the last caller that I'm hearing you really well.
Okay, good.
Let me turn you down a bit. All right, we'll see if we can dial you in. While I get your name in the lower third, talk to us. What's going on? What's on your mind?
You brought up empathy as your moral standard kind of thing.
I wouldn't say empathy is my moral standard. I'd say I use empathy, but it's not like what I base my morality on.
Yeah,
I'd say it's important.
Go ahead.
That's it.
Yeah, I think personally, empathy is kind of a mix between nature and nurture. So usually when I'm talking about empathy, what I'm pointing out is the fact that as just animals, we naturally empathize with each other to different degrees. And that empathy can be a basis for moral structures that we see in the world. You know, it didn't just need to come from a God. I don't know if that's too granular, but if that gives a little bit more clarity, I hope that helps.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say this empathy stuff gives us the DEI, the trans stuff, and eventually will lead to an oppressive communism, because if everybody's empathetic, the first thing you're going to do is get rid of like a meritocracy.
Well, hold on. You said a whole lot of things there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you know what the argument from consequent is?
No, I'm not really good on this stuff. I was listening to you, and you both are very well educated, and even the listeners and other guys are educated on this.
My guy?
I
don't have a college degree. I'm just obsessed with this topic. So
well, yeah, well, I'm not obsessed with it, but
fair enough.
Your obsession makes you very well educated. So
well, I sincerely appreciate that. So there are things called fallacies, and a fallacy is just a reason, like a way of using logic that doesn't really work. It doesn't mean that it's false. It just means that it doesn't really work, right? I'll give you two examples really quick, just to kind of like set the stage, and then I'll tell you what's going on. Okay. So one example that I always got was like the argument from hypocrisy, right? If somebody is a hypocrite, then what they're saying is false. So like when I was a teenager, I used to steal my dad's cigarettes and smoke them. And at one point my dad came up and said, you know, he saw me smoking, and he said, and my dad was like a pack-a-day smoker. And he looks at me and he goes, "Those are going to kill you. You know that? You shouldn't be doing that." Well, that makes my dad a hypocrite, but he's not wrong. Right. And
yeah, I understand that argument.
Yeah. And so like if somebody points out hypocrisy doesn't have anything to do with the truth. It just means someone's a hypocrite. Right.
Right.
One of the oldest fallacies in human history is the argument from the stick. The ad baculum is the Latin name for it. And it just means that you're going to believe this is true, or I'm going to hurt you, right? At the end of a sword, right? And so does being threatened with danger make something more true? No. So like, it doesn't make it false. It's just not a good way to get to truth. So okay. I think that you're using a fallacy when you say what you just said, and it's called the argument from consequences. And so my easiest example is if the Holocaust if the Holocaust happened, that would be really bad, right? Like really bad. And if it's that bad, that means that that means it never happened.
Whoops, did I lose you?
Can you hear me still?
Hold on. No.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I've got the YouTube muted, so you're a little bit delay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we definitely want you to mute it so that you can just hear me through your phone line.
Yes.
And only the phone
Unfortunately,
line.
I'm looking at you, and you're talking at a different rate.
Yeah. Let's not look at the screen, but focus on the sound of my voice, Steve.
Right.
So
the only thing is,
but do you get me when it comes to like the argument from consequences? If you're trying to say that something is bad, that doesn't mean that it's more or less true. It just means that.
But we're actually watching it in action today, as atheism and the secularism has pushed us into this empathy. We have exactly this DEI, this trans stuff, and everybody trying to move towards communism, and communism becoming very popular.
Well, actually, so a couple of things. Number one, right, DEI and trans stuff I think is fine. we can talk about it. But I think you're implying that I'm going to agree with you, and I actually don't agree. So that's not getting like legs, that's not going anywhere.
Right. Well, then,
But and the communism thing is weird. I'm not a communist, and that feels like you might be talking about someone who's not us. And so,
right, but I would argue that if you're going with the empathy, that would logically result in a society of communism because they like that kind of stuff. It's all empathy based.
So, are you a Christian, Steve?
Yes.
Do you believe in Jesus?
Yes.
Was Jesus empathetic?
I think Jesus was taking he was a hierarchical God above everybody, and then man above women and children.
I mean,
so you don't think he was empathetic?
Yeah, because if I look back at the Sermon on the Mountain, that feels like empathy to me.
Yeah. Blessed are the meek.
Right? Healing and we're not religious. We're just trying to point out in your own religion.
Right.
Well, it all depends on meek. I mean, Jordan Peterson made the argument meek, he said, was misinterpreted as into you have to be strong and you have to know to, what is it called, keep your sword sheathed. And that's knowing what you can do. You have to still be strong and stand up for things.
So what do you think Jesus means when he says those people are blessed? What do you think Jesus means when he's talking about the last shall be first? Do you think he's talking about understanding other people's positions and you as the individual having care for them because you don't know where they're placed in God's kingdom? You don't think that's the message that he's trying to get across there?
Well, I think if you're going to get into God's kingdom, you should love your neighbor and everybody.
That's empathy.
Don't you think that's empathy, right? I mean,
no, not necessarily.
I'm with you there. I think that's what the story is, Steve. I think that's empathy.
Religion.
Yes, absolutely, in patriarchal religion, because
empathy would be the woman's job. Logic and reason would be the husband or the father's job. And sometimes you have to have a stern hand with your children.
I think that if you beat your children, you should have your children taken away from you. And
hold on a second.
Yeah.
Not beat. There's also a word called correction. Some children will need a correction. Constantly correcting them or beating them, that is immoral, and that would not be empathetic, and that would not be loving them.
Okay, so if you beat them just a little bit, or when you think it's justified, then it's fine.
Well, you're just using beat as violence and hate.
I'm talking about a correction. Let me change it to this, Steve. A physical correction that requires one human being striking another with their body. Do you think there are some children in this world that just require that type of connection, that type of correction?
Do either of you have children?
I don't.
So I raised my siblings.
Well, here's the thing.
I mean, yeah, I could give that answer.
You're going to run into kids that will not take reason or anything. They're just so bullheaded.
And you're saying that I just want to be clear on this, Steve, because if this is what you believe, I mean, just stand by it, honestly, right? Be a man.
Occasionally you'll get young boys or something like that will need a correction to snap them out of it.
There are some people under the age of 18 who require correction that has to be physical. You must strike them, otherwise they will not learn things. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you don't even have to necessarily strike. If you watch like the dog whisperer, he never corrects a dog by hitting them, but he will poke them really hard and jab them out of the state that they're in.
So you think it's right to jab a child very hard to get them? You're saying some children require that level of correction, Steve.
Yes,
it sounds like you're backing away from
this. They go off the rails, but that's a correction. That's not beating. The problem is you want to conflate a correction with a beating.
No, I'm not. I'm
the one conflating it. It sounds like I'm kind of taking a back seat. Otherwise, we're ganging up on you, and that's not really fair.
And since smack on the rear or something like that.
And since Elliot is the one who's engaging with you, I'm just stepping back.
Yeah. So, Steve, let's step into this space. I'm not saying beating here. I'm taking your understanding. A correction that requires physical or corporal punishment, as is often termed. You believe that there are some children that just have to have that, otherwise they'll never learn. Otherwise, they'll never do the right thing. Is that what you're saying?
Hey, you've got to teach kids consequences, and sometimes they're just so belligerent they won't change. Especially if you've got an empathetic mother that'll let them walk all over them.
Yes, you do believe that is what you're saying. You do believe that corporal punishment is required for some children. I just really think that's gross, man. I really do. And I think that's a terrible system for us to utilize. We can go through like the logical consequences. We can go through like grounding of morality and so forth. But I just really feel like if you stand up in your church tomorrow, if you stand up in a grocery store next week and just go, hey guys, hey everybody, real quick, I really do believe some children require corporal punishment.
If they're out of hand, yes.
I don't feel like you're going to find the majority of people on your side, and B,
well, that's because they're all empathetic.
I think that's a better world.
Women.
It's a better world when people disagree with that understanding of how to engage with people, especially children. And I believe, and I'm not leveling this at you, Steve, but I do believe it is because of that ideology. That's the reason that we see so much abuse in religious institutions. I really do think that is the through line.
So Steve.
Oh, actually, no, I think you see so much abuse in religion is because they're not really practicing their religion like Christianity. They're just continuing to abuse and do whatever they want. It's not a corrective thing.
So Steve, there are so many things that you said that are amazingly, frustratingly things that we cannot address in 10 minutes.
Well, here's the
thing.
So my two children, I only had to spank once because one was going off the rails.
So the empathy thing is what we should probably stick with. If you if you think like the male logical, woman emotional thing, I think that's weird, and we'll have to tackle that on another day. But the empathy thing, I think, is part of being a mammal. That is mammalian. That is being a human. And so to say that men should not be empathetic would be to ask them to ignore what is natural to humans, which is to care for one another. I think that you are moralizing something that not even your religion would teach, which would mean that you're the fake.
Repeat that again?
Sure. So I think that to ignore your empathy, or to think that ignoring your empathy is the right thing to do, is number one, to have people ignore what comes natural to being a human. And number two, as a religious person, as a Christian, I think it actually goes against the teaching of your own religion. And I'm not even another Christian. I think that if you're calling people fakes, then you need to understand that what you're saying makes you a fake too.
Well, if you want to talk about what it means to be a human, just look at the past history of humanity. It's not very pretty.
That's what you choose to focus on, and that's understandable. It's a big mixed bag.
Right, and some of that, if you want good law and order and good people, some of them you're going to have to correct, and some of them will not listen by giving them hugs.
Do you think that's our view?
Yeah.
Well, but that's what you're arguing for.
So there's
corrections.
Right. I'm going to give you one more thing. I know that I'm giving you a lot of philosophical terms here, but there's a difference. There's something called straw manning and steel manning, right? Straw manning is the idea that you want to attack a person, but you don't know how, and so you build like this stuffed doll in their image, and you attack the doll instead because it's easier to do that. Steel manning is when you do your best to try and represent what you think that they're trying to say.
Okay, well then
and
tell
so
me how
I think
your
that what you're
work.
doing when you talk about, I think that what you're doing when you say just giving them hugs. I think what you're doing is you're straw manning us. You're not giving us the opportunity to actually talk about it. You're creating a version of us that doesn't exist, that's easy to beat up on. So we're here.
Well, then explain how your empathy is going to work. I see a lot of criticism of religion, but no actual answer as to what you guys plan on doing and how it will work and not result in exactly the stuff we see today.
Right. So I have you watched the whole episode?
No, I haven't. Been eating lunch, and some of the stuff I can't hear. And
so
while I was waiting on call, it's a little difficult.
After our caller from Mexico, I was kind of talking about the idea that we talk about morality like we're needing to build a car when we're already on the road. I would advise you kind of look back and take a look at that. I think that if you've watched this show at all, you'll know that I have a very strong rule here, and that is that people deserve respect, ideas do not. The idea that women are inferior, the idea that trans folks are inferior, the idea that you need to be the corrector, and the idea that you would look down on others the way that it appears that you're doing with the language that you're using, all of those things are really gross. And I would be really happy to point out specifically why they're not only gross, but wrong in making the world a better place, wrong as a Christian, and wrong philosophically. So if you'd like to call in and have your thoughts challenged, you should, because we'll challenge them. I think that you as a person can grow and be better than what you're holding on to right now.
Right, but what's the long-term results of all of this stuff? I mean, as you see it, you don't have any commands to hold up family, the head of the household. So birth rates are down. You're letting women go out and get careers instead of having
pants.
children.
How dare they? Yeah. Should be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. I think you were born in the wrong era, Steve.
And where's the birth rate trend going?
Is there a moral? Yeah. Is there a moral piece of that?
Right.
Well, yeah. If we don't have enough kids, we won't be around anymore.
I think that there are plenty of people having kids.
Yeah, I mean,
there's
first
plenty
off,
of people having kids.
I don't know. Hang on, Steve. I don't know that humans not existing. I don't know that that's some moral thing that in terms of
that's the inherent
universe,
part of nihilism,
right?
of atheism.
But hang on, Steve.
You
can have your time to talk in just a second. You're a big boy. I know you know how to be quiet. So the other side of this, though, Steve, is you're acting as if 8 billion people on the earth is the right amount of people. What if 1 billion people causes so much more happiness? What if by us not having kids for a generation or two, it decreases the amount of people, thus increasing all of the resources in the world, thus everybody can now live in such a beautiful state of existence. This idea that women going out there and getting careers, and especially tying it to the birth rate, man, it's really weird. Imagine if somebody said the same thing about dudes. You'd find that kind of weird. Man, Steve, if you're out there, doing a job all day, thinking about stuff, you just don't have enough time for your balls to get, enough sperm in them so that you can just spread your seed. It's just weird. It's just a weird way to look at people, man. And I think it's a better world when we all get an opportunity to live out our lives.
Hedonism.
Hold on.
Say again.
Hold on. Steve, you're doing this kind of amazing thing where you're not answering the question, but what you say is so interesting, we want to follow. Because each thing you say feels like it's categorically incorrect. And
where's the proof? It's wrong. Look at society.
Hold on. Where's the proof it's wrong? Where's the proof about you being right, Steve? You're making a case, so you should support your argument.
Look at the declining birth rates.
So Elliot just
and then the other guy just said
no. Steve, hold on.
Yeah.
Elliot just responded to you, and if you don't why are you acting like he didn't just respond to you?
Yeah.
I may not have heard it.
Okay, so then
about the birth rates.
Then let's hold off. I need you to actively listen. Call back when you do. Take care.
All righty.
That was fucking gross. What the shit?
There's a lot there. There was a lot there. And
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have somebody tell us either in the live chat or in the comment section below, which, by the way, post a comment, folks, after the show's over. But I'm sure we'll have somebody tell us,
and if you leave
hey, you let him go on too long and you should have pushed back on this or that.
Oh, yeah. For us, that there are... So, two things. Number one, if you leave a super chat, we'll make sure we read it before the end of the episode. But the second is, there's something called a Gish Gallop. And a Gish Gallop is was named after a guy who went on the news and brought up so many things at once that there was just not enough time for him to be corrected on everything, and therefore he got away with saying a whole lot of really shitty things. And that became the way that a lot of people get away with saying shitty things, is if they just keep saying enough of it too quickly to be corrected, then people feel like they got away with stuff. That was kind of Gish Gallopy, but I think that he just has an entirely different fundamental view of the universe. I'm glad he found the show, because I think that there can be work done there. And I want to be clear, that's not work that I want to do, but I think it would be interesting. And I think we can demonstrate, if people want to have, a good approach, how to approach those conversations. But I can't believe we shot through 2 hours. I do want to hop in the after show. Are you going to be going into the after show?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we can pick up some more of that philosophy talk. If y'all want to join us, by the way, we're going to be going to Discord. The link is in the description. But I want to read the super chats and say, Skeptic Generation, it's just this. It's not part of a larger organization, and we're doing our best to hold it up. And if you like the show, you like the conversations that we're having, and you like, how we are pushing things, consider supporting it. Go to patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration. Anything that comes in goes directly into paying these phone lines. Oh my gosh. Keeping phone lines open for people in Canada and Mexico for 2 hours adds up. But every little bit helps. And there are other ways to support the show as well that don't require money. That just hit the like button, hit subscribe if you've been watching and you want to make sure that you're tuned in to when we're going to be going live again. Share this out, put that out on social media, because as this increases, as the pool grows, then, other people can watch and support us. The algorithm can pick us up and we can get going again. All of that really, really does help, and we really do appreciate it. Let's read the super chats. John Klein sent $10. Thank you, John, and says, love you, my man. Love you back, John. Thank you. Atheo Rakatru. Oh, Atheo Pagan. Hey, sent $20, says, trying to sneak one past me. Nice try, John. There is an ongoing competition in the super chats between them, and I support it entirely. I take no sides. I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you. My Unfinished Journey, who sends a super chat every episode, sent $2 and says, hail Nero, hail Eric and SR, and hail John. John! Woo. John, did you hear that? You got added in. I think John upgraded. I feel like that you got like that Pokemon evolution.
Got hailed.
John's evolving into his next form. And God sent $2 and said, John is making progress. I agree. Who would have thought? Instead of jumping down his throat, taking a moment, listening and engaging. And I didn't do that at first either. But we'll see where we go from there. I'm really, really grateful that we are where we are, though. I'm glad y'all joined us for the show. Again, the show's Skeptic Generation. Elliot, how can people and where can people find you?
Yeah, you can go look me up if you want to just find my dumb face, Secular Rarity, all the places. But please go out there and look up Secular Rising US. It's super duper easy because it is the same thing everywhere. SecularRisingUS.org. You can check out our website and just get connected with us. If you are an atheist, a skeptic, a secular-minded person, a humanist, non-religious of any stripe, agnostic, whatever, and you are in Tennessee or you are in the Southeast, get connected with us, because this year we have a lot of really cool opportunities already, and we are growing a really big network. And you don't want to miss out. We're going to be working with a lot of really wonderful organizations. So,
I love it. I love that you're doing what you're doing, man, and I sincerely appreciate it. And also, God, the way you engaged with that caller from Mexico, I adore. I adore. I'm so grateful for you, my friend. So yeah, are you? I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot, but are you going to be joining us next week?
Yeah, I'll be back on Easter.
Nice. We'll have an Atheist Day celebration, because oh no, that's April 1st, isn't it? Did we miss it? We missed it.
Atheist. Yeah, that March 23rd is Atheist Day normally these days.
Oh, you know what I'm doing is I'm mixing it up with when American Atheist does their convention, because they do it every Easter.
They always do on But so this is real cool, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but I'll do it real quick here, so that we can get to Discord. But actually, there is a new idea come by way of the amazing people over at Bridge City and Durante Lamar. So he's got this awesome idea to reframe this whole Easter season for secular people. So it is the Keep Rising season. It is all about growth. It is all about us rising, building each other up, building ourselves up, building our community up. And so there's all kinds of little, simple rituals that we can do throughout the day. Just do something kind for somebody, or take a moment to watch the sunrise. These types of things that are completely non-religious, that are just about us as people, so they're doing something real cool, and we're working with them and trying to get the Keep Rising season to be something that every time around this year we focus on. So yeah, go check them out. If you don't know about Bridge City and Durante Lamar, you guys, you got to see what he's doing. So
I love that. I'll check that out. I haven't been plugged in. Cool. Cheers to that. Also, because you're going to be on next week, Titan Uranus put in the live chat, SR will rise again on Easter Sunday.
That's right. That's right. Yes, I will. Me and my little Jesus will come together.
Love it. All right. Let's hop over to Discord. Until next time, I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm Secular Rarity.
This is Skeptic Generation.
We're glad we had this talk.
Nice, you got it.